Jeff, break down your bust-out hand from the PokerStars Players Championship. Let's start with pre-flop action, kind of set the scene for us.
All right, so it's about 20 minutes left in the day, roughly. I have 55K, so the big blind is 501K. Dylan Wilkerson, very tough, good player, has a good size stack, opens in middle position to 2200. The button flats, and I look down at two red aces, so pretty much the dream spot
Decent.
to squeeze. Yeah, like the situation. Again, it's not like I have 200 big blinds. Like start the day with 300 blinds, so 55 blinds. I mean, it's still deep, but it's not like infinitely deep. Like I'm definitely happy to get heads up and play a big pot. I ended up making it 8,800. Which is a 4x the open, but there was a flatter. So it's actually not that big of a sizing. I'm out of position since I'm in the big blind. So if either of the two players call me, they're going to have position on me after the flop, which is, that's important. So you have to take that into consideration. I think generally you want to be a little bit, maybe go even a little bit bigger. I think like 12K, 11K might have been in theory a little better, but again, I have aces and exploitively, like that's one of the only hand like where really going smaller is okay. It's not like it's small. I made 8,800, put some meat on it. Again, 55 blinds deep, effective. Dylan calls, the button folds. So heads up, aces out of position. Again, I'm not like, there's not too many boards where I'm not gonna feel super comfortable just to get the money in, as we go. But the board came king 8-4, and that's definitely a very good flop for my hand. He's going to have king queens, king jack suiteds, king 10 suiteds. Also he's going to have some other pairs where he may get sticky with sevens, nines. Of course, the pocket eights make a set. He's also a very talented player who is going to flat my re-raise with king. So I mean that is a possibility, of course, but those type of hands play themselves. If that's what he has, so be it. He could even have fours, but again, that's a little less likely, him flatting with a hand like that. So basically kings or eights beat me in my mind right now. We go to the flop, and again, the 2200 flat, the 2200 big blind ante in there. So there's like 9K, 18, 20, 22,000 middle. I bet a little, about third pot, around 6,700. He calls, so I'm like, all right, this is immediately a bad card in my mind would be a king. Of course, a queen would be bad as well, because king, queen suited, king, queen, those type of hands. It comes a jack, which is not the best card. King jack suited possible. Pocket jacks he also could have for sure, where he just peeled, he's not just going to fold the one bet. So again, it's not like the best card in the world, but a king would be the worst. Queen would be the next in my mind. Jack's up there, but not, I'm not ready to just say, oh, I'm beat. I decided to slow down though. I don't want to just like inflate the pot unnecessarily. I kind of want to see where he's at. Also let him bluff some. Maybe he does have some bluffs that he's going to start ace queen suited, ace 10. He might decide to start betting. So, I say I'm going to give the lead to him. I check. He bets 9,000. Of course, I call. Can't fold at this point. And then the river. It was a 4-card rainbow. So it was a 3-card rainbow on the flop, meaning there was not a flush draw on the flop. And now on the turn is a 4-card rainbow as well. So there's no possible flush draw going to the river. On the river, it's a deuce. So super brick. Definitely like, if I was good, I'm good. Basically lose to kings, lose to eights, lose to fours, lose to king jack suited. And then if you start thinking about, so what ends up happening is I check and he shoved. And I had about 28,000, about half my stack was in the middle. Really not a fun spot. Like Dylan's tough, but like I don't think he's like gonna necessarily just blast off on me here. So it's like kind of, you really have to look at his value cuts. What hands is he value betting? That he thinks he's value betting. Ace king is the most obvious, which I beat. There's not a ton of combos of that because I have aces. So, now it's like, well, would he go all in with king, queen? I don't know. I don't think so. He might even value bet it or check back in that particular spot versus me. We definitely have history. I think he's held over me he's one of the guys that stands out as like just, pot situations, like like losing flips or these kind of situations. Like he's a very good player, but, just kind of like he knows I'm playing solid. I don't think he thinks I'm just out of line. So like, or we're going to call really light. So I have to really think on the river, what is his range? What does he have? And it's basically I beat ace king. I lose to those hands I've mentioned. Actually looking at it, like unless he had queen 10 suited, which he floated on the flop, picked up a draw. There's not a lot of draws. There's really no draws. And then it's like I'm losing to a lot of those hands I mentioned. So I think looking back on it, like, when you hear you lose aces to kings and a heads up pot, 50 blinds effective, it's kind of like, all right. And like it wasn't like the board was like queen, jack, 9, where it's like that would be one of the flops, or king, queen, jack, where I could just like I could start thinking of a lot of hands I'm losing to. When I look at this board, it's so dry on that flop. It's like when you really break down his range, it's actually like sort of close to maybe I could fold the river and say, all right, I'll take my 25 blinds, suck it up, just fold. But like I talked to a few players, a few friends. That's why poker's so cool. You can really like talk. I talk to like Brian Rast, Dan Coleman, even Bill Perkins, who he's a student of the game, always talking, listening. We talk with he talks to people, I talk to people. We kind of take information. You start thinking about it, and it's like, yeah, I mean, it's not like a clear call on the river, but it's like also like kind of exploitative. If you're like folding aces like on this board in these spots, it's like it's tricky, and that's why poker's fun. There's not necessarily always one way to do something, and everything's different, right? Like whether the person you're playing, the stack sizes, the whole dynamic is always changing. That's part of the fun of the game. Ultimately, I call in the pocket kings. So again, hand plays itself pretty much like that's a cooler. It sucks. I was on the right side of a cooler that turned wrong, but maybe in that spot, like looking at it, maybe I could have raised a little more pre-flop. It wouldn't have changed in this particular case, but that's something to look at. And then also on the river, could find a fold there, but I'm not like beating myself up. I don't think it was a mistake. I just think like when I break all those hands down, his value hands, throwing maybe a couple bluffs, really not many, and then the hands I'm beating, which is ace king essentially for value, which he would have in that spot. He flatted kings, he would flat ace king probably versus me in that spot. So yeah, I mean it sucks, especially when it's first term of the year, 25K, the special event, 8 minutes left in the day. Even coming in with 20, 25 or 20 blinds, 25 blinds is exciting. You get to go sleep. I went to dinner with a bunch of my buddies. Some of them were here, guys that aren't professional players, and then Bill as well, somewhere in between. My buddy Hook, Poppy, Joey, we were all at dinner, and literally it was, all right, he's in. My two amateur buddies from Michigan, card guys, like the memorabilia guys are in. Bill's in, and I'm the only guy out. And then it's just like, I'm the pro. It's like these guys are, Joey's a hobby tournament player. Bill's a hobby player. These two guys are hobby players. My one buddy Hook is a cash game player pretty much. And it's just like, I'm the guy out. And it's like kind of like, it doesn't feel good to be out of such a special event. Like it's like busting the main World Series man. It's like always the worst to bust. And then you start looking back, it's generally not your bust hand. Like that's generally not the hand where it all, you look back at your day and there's a lot of spots where maybe you called a river bluff, or you made a bad bluff, or you called the spot where you could have folded. So ultimately it's not usually your last hand. In that particular case, again, I'm not beating myself up, just kind of a bummer. And I would say to people at home, like, really look at that. Like, when you talk about your bust-out hand, I think that's not a mistake, but, like, the game is won and lost, small blind, big blind, small pots, picking up uncontested pots, finding good opening spots. That's where the tournament poker is won and lost. When you start talking about aces to kings or ace king to jacks, which I want to flip ace king to jacks for a decent pot, like 24K, so that was a 48K, so it's not just like, all right, like I lost aces to kings tournament, it's over. Like, no, like, yeah, I could have essentially got away from that. I could have played it differently. If I had more chips, I wouldn't have been out, wouldn't necessarily gone out. So I think that's really one thing to think about when you're playing tournaments is think about all the other small spots. You shouldn't just be thinking about those cooler situations and flips and set over sets. Like nothing you're going to do in those spots. It's a lot of other things that add up. So I would just tell people to kind of focus and think about that more.